Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Personal mission statement. We were talking yesterday about writing the personal mission statement, and in order to write your personal mission statement, you really need to define what your center is. So we went over that your center, the deep insides of your sphere of influence, your circle of influence, are powered and controlled and aligned with your security, your guidance, wisdom, and power. Okay? And you really need to identify that center in order to write your personal mission statement. What's interesting is we don't always recognize what is our center. We might have a general idea. We might be able to look at things that are influential in our lives, things that we care about, and have some idea of what could be near our center, and not a firm, concrete idea. And a lot of times we don't even recognize that that particular thing is so powering in our personal lives. So it reminded me, as I was reading through all these pages, again, 40 pages we're going to try to cram into today, that I've often said in coaching, your greatest strength will often be your greatest weakness. Your greatest strength will often also be your greatest weakness. So a person that's really outgoing and bubbly, for instance, loves to get out there and talk to people, sometimes has a tough time hunkering down and focusing on the task at hand, especially if it's something that they're doing on their own. They prefer to be out there with people in public, and one-on-one completing a task gets boring and they get distracted easily. That's an example. It can be one of their greatest assets to growing their business, and yet it's also one of their greatest weaknesses because they can't grow their business unless they get their stuff done. So in a very similar manner, looking at our centers, listed a few of them out here. I hope you can see them all. It looks like you can. Great. So as we're going around the circle, your spouse could be your center. Wait a minute, Jeff, if my spouse is my center, how could that be bad? It could be very intimate. It could be very loving. It could be an amazing relationship. And at the same time, what happens when you fight? All of a sudden, your center is gone. You have nothing that's anchoring you there. It becomes very frustrating. You have no place to escape. You literally, your best friend is in an argument with you, and you don't know where to take that. You become lost in the fact that your spouse is your center. Family centered, very similar thing. Deep relationships, deep guidelines. If you get into a fight with your family, what are you going to do? At the same time, that family has created a culture that the world can't recreate. It's the family's culture. And so if you're stuck in your family's culture, often if you have to go and look outside, or if something maybe is happening wrong with your spouse because your spouse isn't your family's culture, perhaps that's a source of tension because you were raised one way and you're so centered on that one way and that family dynamic that you're having a tough time looking at it from outside. So let's go through some of the others very quickly. We've got money centered. We could see where the positives and negatives of money center might be, right? Very financially influenced. Could lead to great security, but it could also lead to a lot of stress if the money isn't there or if people are handling money a different way than you would. Work-centered, possession-centered, pleasure-centered, friends-centered, enemy-centered, church-centered, or self-centered. We've heard that expression before in the past, right? So these are all different centers that you could have. In fact, most of us are probably a combination of these centers, right? Where sometimes we're very spouse-centered and sometimes we're very family-centered. Those go hand in hand. A lot of us are spouse, family, church-centered. And it's very hard for people not to be self-centered on occasion. We are the most important people in our lives in many ways, right? So these are the possible centers. So in the book, Stephen Covey would argue that if any of these are your center, then you are going to have a tough time being as effective as you possibly could be. And what do you suppose that means? Well, again, if work is part of your center and you want to be successful at work, if your spouse wants you at home more, your family needs you at home more, and work needs you at work more, well, now we've reached an issue if these are our three centers that are fighting for that attention. So what Stephen R. Covey would suggest, what we've talked a bit about before in the past, is that our center be our principles. That if we build our center based off of our principles, and everything else is kind of the wheel and the circle around it, then what we're going to find is that as we focus again on the inside, the pieces that are outside of our direct control will also be influenced. When we know that we're building our decisions on a strong foundation, those strong foundational decisions will help everywhere else because we know that we're building it with good values at hand and we're doing the right thing, not necessarily for the right people or the right situations. So that's our inside out again, instead of focusing on those external centers. There we go. Man, that was easier than I thought it was going to be. I really thought this conversation was going to go a lot farther over. So have any questions about that, just ask in the comments. At the same time, there are pages and pages and pages of charts that break this concept down more in the book. If you haven't picked up the book, feel free to. Again, not endorsed. And if you just want to see the charts and dig into any of these centers to help you to discover which of those centers you currently have, and again, principle-centered, find the principles inside each of these externals that you value and create those to be your principle-centered, right? Like you're writing your creed, you're looking at your personal mission statement, and you're using those values, those principles as the core to your personal mission statement. So that way, as you grow throughout life, it continues to become your personal constitution. So literally pages and pages and pages of these charts. If you're interested, I will post them. Otherwise, you might be able to Google them on your own. And there's a lot of little charts to read through and go through, and even an appendix to look at and see how, if you're looking at it, as if it's your paradigm, what different filter or perspective you might be having if you're centered in each of these sections. So that's it, everybody. I hope everybody has an amazing day, and let us know how you're doing on your habit. Have a great one.